Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Entrepreneur Interview Series presented by the Undergraduate Entrepreneurship Association at Carnegie Mellon University. I am Ishgun Singh, Arora, rising sophomore at CMU, and today I am pleased to welcome the CEO of Zodaj, Awa. Zodaj was founded in 2018 and operates as a holding company that incubates initiatives all geared towards tackling developmental issues in Africa. So, hi Awa, it's a pleasure to speak to you today. Could you please introduce yourself to us?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for having me. That was a great introduction, first of all. I'm a rising junior currently. I'm a Tepper student. I'm majoring in business administration with a double major in Chinese studies. Really excited to be here today. Zodaj is my first company. I founded it my freshman year during orientation week, actually, along with a small group of CMU students from across all the other schools as well. And we've grown quite a bit since then. So, yeah.
Wow, orientation week. Wow.
Yeah.
That's certainly, I'm pretty sure that's certainly something all students aim for when we get into college. We get there, talk to all the students, and we start something. It's good you all got that off the ground. First, what I want to get into is before getting into what your company really does, what I'm really interested in is the aspect of social entrepreneurship in your company. So before we get into the specifics of what Zodaj is all about, I think hearing a little about the problem that you guys have known about and you guys are trying to tackle is really important. So if you could expand on that a little.
Yeah, for sure. So we're very Africa focused. We aim to branch out into the rest of the developing world eventually, but for now our focus is mainly within the African continent. And this is something that I think is quite interesting because if you look at most of our founders, we're almost entirely an African group. So we come from a range of different countries from across the continent. And I think this gives us a specific edge that you don't see a lot with Africa-focused startups based in the US. And so with that in mind, I myself am from Senegal, West Africa, and I did spend quite a bit of my childhood there growing up. And I was exposed to just a lot of the developmental issues and the standards of living that exist there, to this day. And it really inspired me to take on an initiative that I thought could help in a way. And then I think something interesting to note is that I did grow up in a UN family, so both my parents worked for the United Nations. So I was very exposed to like humanitarian work and kind of just the bureaucracy that kind of tends to slow down any sort of humanitarian aid that's provided for African countries, developing countries in general. So I thought social entrepreneurship was definitely a faster, more efficient way to bring about solid socioeconomic change in developing countries for sure. So that's kind of how Zodaj was born, around that idea.
Right.
For sure.
That's certainly one particular problem that needs to be addressed big time. It's pretty good that you guys are working on it. Now expanding on that same topic, what is Zodaj and like what is your vision? What's your vision? What's your mission? What are you guys all about?
Yeah, so I didn't come to my group of fellow entrepreneurs with any idea of what I wanted to do product wise. It was kind of just a bunch of problems I wanted to tackle. So I just kind of dumped a bunch of problems in their laps and I was like, all right, guys, let's come up with some ideas on how to fix these. So we came up with the idea that a holding company was a perfect fit for us so that we'd be able to tackle multiple different industry issues that we wanted to look at, such as clean water and sanitation, health and technology, education and technology, a wide range of things. So we have multiple smaller initiatives under the Zodaj umbrella. So we have an educational technology focus right now. As we mentioned prior to this interview, we're working on something related to contact tracing, which is going to fall under our med tech branch. And we have a foundation, which is more focused on, anything nonprofit related. So we're just trying to tackle a bunch of different issues with essentially the same team. And our team has grown to about 40 students at this point. So pretty big.
Yeah,
for a startup.
That's a big number. Did all CMU students?
Yeah, they were all CME students till this summer when we started outsourcing. We've got some students from Cornell, a couple of schools in New York, some schools in Boston. That's specifically for our contact tracing initiative, though. So other than that, we're mostly just a CME-based team.
Right, you hire them as interns, and that's how you go about it?
Yeah. So this is our first time taking on interns this summer. It was a very last minute and like very random decision. We had actually been working on Echo, our edtech startup. A lot of our focus over winter break was on the foundation, so we were really focusing on the edtech initiative. And we kind of pivoted. Originally, we were going to create tablets, and we were going to create educational games, and that kind of changed into more of a uh, college board for Africa idea. So I can delve into that a little bit more later. But what happened was COVID hit, quarantine hit. We were all stuck home. That kind of threw a wrench in a couple of our plans. We were supposed to attend a couple of pitch competitions. And essentially, me being from Senegal, I keep up to date with the news there. And I realize, COVID affects the developing world much differently than it affects developed nations.
Right.
With quarantine, a lot of the times people, every day they work for the meal that they're going to have that day, right? So if you're stuck in quarantine, how do you manage to survive and how do you take care of your family? So you're seeing in a lot of developing countries, they're lifting the quarantine bans and people are just getting more and more sick, and the situation is, getting worse and worse every day. So we figured we wanted to make a contact tracing system specific for the developing world that would, work well there, considering, technological barriers and anything of that sort. So we've actually worked to develop an SMS system so that people could self-report offline. So that's one of the things that we've been really focused on this summer. So we have an app, we have a website, and then we also have the SMS system to create this fully integrated system, essentially.
Wow, that's really interesting. This is something you guys started off with after COVID. This wasn't
Yeah,
any stuff. It's only operational in Africa right now, or have you launched it wide open?
Yeah, so our pilot country is Senegal, my home country. So we have officially secured our government contract to begin deploying it. So right now we're just finishing up on our testing specifically for the SMS system. And then we'll be deploying within a week or two. And this will be throughout the entire country. And then hopefully, if things go well, we'll expand to other countries within the African continent and then maybe other developing nations, South America, Asia, etc.
You touched upon your COVID project. That's really interesting. You also touched slightly upon Zodaj Foundation and another project, Echo. Could you
Yeah,
expand on those two and like tell us the difference between the two?
yeah, for sure. So I'll start with the foundation. So basically, again, we really decided that the best route for us was a for-profit initiative, but we also realized that companies and just for-profit initiatives in general have their limitations that nonprofit initiatives don't. So we wanted to be able to do a lot more with the knowledge and the expertise and the skills that we had. So we decided to have a foundation, so our nonprofit branch under the Zodaj umbrella, essentially, so that we could kind of just do everything that we wanted to do. So with the foundation, we created this little program that we call the Zodaj Ambassador Program. So, and sorry if you hear some crying, I'm like babysitting my cousin, so that's probably what's in the background. Yeah, so right? Yeah, he's very noisy, but happy baby overall. So yeah, with the Zodaj Ambassador Program, we basically brought together a group of 15 students from across 5 countries in West Africa, and we trained them in computer science, entrepreneurship, and leadership. And the whole initiative was really focused on creating, or at least helping give young entrepreneurs new skills and resources that they otherwise wouldn't have access to across the continent, right? So a lot of these resources we brought along from CMU, and we've connected them to a lot of people, and we're hoping to launch a pitch competition as well, and finance some of their initiatives too. So that's something that we're really interested in. So this whole idea of entrepreneurship and feeding the economy from the ground up in these countries is something that we want to do across the board through all of our initiatives. Yeah, and then for our EdTech initiative, Echo, like I mentioned before, we started off with the idea of game design and educational games, and we branched off recently to this college board focused idea. Let me explain that a bit. So if you look at the African continent, I'm not sure about every single country, but most countries still currently use the educational systems that were brought in by the colonizers. So if you take Senegal, for example, the high school like exit exam, I guess you could say, is the French baccalaureate. In a lot of Anglophone countries, they take the A levels. There's nothing that's specifically African. So with the education system, it's not really designed to fit the specific circumstances that really only exist in the developing world. So that's something that we kind of wanted to change. So it's an ambitious feat for sure, but we are currently working with professors and the Ministry of Education on the ground in Senegal to work on revamping the high school curriculum and the college entrance exam as well. And we really think that a hybrid of what currently exists on the ground, as well as something that is more fit for a developing nation and more innovative in general, is something that would best fit the target audience that we're looking at. And we really want to have a focus on vocational training. So for anyone who doesn't know, vocational training is really focused on hard skills and soft skills that can be applicable to a career, just anything workforce related, so that as we know, a lot of the times people don't finish high school or like make it to college when it comes to the developing world. So if they're able to leave high school at whatever point and still have skills that they can use in the workforce, I feel like we've done our job at that point. So that's kind of what Echo has shifted to.
That sounds like something that has great potential, honestly. And vocational training, like you mentioned, I'm myself from India, and it's a big topic in India as well. A lot of government schemes going on. Again, a lot of people don't graduate high school, as you said, and some directly after 10th grade, they don't want to continue their studies, but they want to be employed. So vocational training is certainly the way to go.
Go ahead.
Going a little away from your work as part of Zodaj Foundation, talking a little more about your personal experiences. One of the first things that I would love to know is that you founded a team in the first week of college, right? How did you pick those students? And orientation week is a time, just to, if anyone's not from CMU, it's a week when it's only 1 week in 4 years when you're actually just meeting people and enjoying and chilling. Where exactly did you find the motivation to, and what was your criteria for selecting those 4 students that you mentioned?
Mm-hmm. It was a bit more than 4 students at the time, but obviously, as it happens with a startup, the team got smaller as people studied abroad, people got overloaded with work at CMU at the end of the day. But so it's actually a pretty funny story, because if you look at my essay, my college essay for CMU, I think it was my supplement. I reread it randomly a couple of weeks ago, and it's so funny because I basically detail in my essay how I plan to start my company at CMU, and it's basically exactly what I did, right? So I came into CMU with a very clear vision of how I wanted to leave. Coming to college for me was really an opportunity to grow my company and to learn how to, be the best CEO that I could be. I think that really drove me to not waste any time. I mean, looking back, I don't think it would have been a waste of time to appreciate a week a little more and take my time with things. But I'm just a very impatient and very driven person. So right off the bat, I was kind of like in recruitment mode. So a big help was definitely the little like events that different clubs host. So like I think the Young African Leadership Organization had one, or association. Spirit, which is like the Black Student Union at CMU, had one. And I was really looking for like African students because I was kind of just tired of seeing like all these Western initiatives coming into the developing world and just kind of trying to dump tech and dump money into the problem. I was just like, no, we can't do this. yeah. So I was just kind of like looking around, like, oh, are you African? Hey, are you African? And I just got people's phone numbers, and I was like, okay, nice to meet you all. You mind meeting with me? And it was like a really sketchy meeting too, because I asked them to meet me at night in Tepper in like a classroom, just like randomly. Nobody knew me. I don't know why they came. It was like 9 p.m. or something. And the room, like all the lights were off. I just had like this projector on, and I started just like pitching this like problem, basically. It wasn't even an idea, it was just a problem. I was like, Africa needs help. And yeah, that's kind of how it started from that point on. And we were able to work relatively quickly just because at least in your first year and the first month of school, the workload isn't too bad. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we had some time on our hands, and it was a great way to make friends too, just because, at that point you're working with these people so closely that like that becomes your best friend group in a way. So it was nice. Yeah.
That's a good story. It's almost too good to be true, to be fair. Like that's nice. All right. One question from CMU's perspective: how do you manage your time? I mean,
yeah.
How do you manage CMU's rigor in academics with running a company with 40 people working under it and doing such great stuff?
Yeah. It is not easy, as you can imagine. I had to figure out pretty early on that I wasn't going to be a straight A student. And I don't say this because I think it's impossible to be a straight A student and still, be an entrepreneur. I say this because I myself I'm not a very like, I don't want to say I'm not an academic person, but when it comes to school, like I really learn to learn and not so much for the grades, right? So I've never, even in high school, I was never super focused on the grades that I was getting, but more so on the content that I was learning and how I could apply it to my ventures. Because even in high school, I started a nonprofit when I was in my senior year. I had like a lot of, aid-focused clubs, which is where I kind of learned about the bureaucracy of like aid and nonprofit work, which I didn't really like. But, in high school, a lot of my focus was just like, what can I learn in school that I can apply to my work? So I brought that into CMU and, getting those first couple of C's and, those D's weren't too hard with that mentality that I had, but it was definitely a kick to the ego. But I think definitely learning to ask for help was my biggest learning curve. Working with other people, other students, talking to my professors, communicating with them, because one thing people don't really think about is you have to kind of travel a lot as an entrepreneur for pitch competitions, anything under the sun. A lot of the times we travel for like our pilot programs, and it's like, how are you going to turn in your homework when you're like on an airplane, right? Things like that. And at first, like I just wasn't communicating with my teachers, and they just kind of thought I wasn't showing up to class and I wasn't doing my work. But it was really just, I was overloaded with my entrepreneurial work. So really communicating with your professors is one thing I had to learn to do. And I just kind of had to let go of the idea of being a straight A student. Like I kind of set a threshold for myself that I don't want to fall under. Mm-hmm. And, I don't freak out when I get a C in a class. I'm okay with getting B's in classes. It's great if I get an A in a class. Obviously, that's the aim. But, I do find myself taking notes, and I have like a Zodaj focused notebook that I bring to all my classes. So if there's any concept, being a business student, if there's any concept that pops up that I think, oh, this is applicable, I'll start taking my notes in there. And those are the notes that I bring to all my meetings. So yeah, that's just kind of how I've managed to juggle it and take some pressure off myself. Because otherwise, I would have gone crazy a long time ago. Yeah.
That notebook idea you just mentioned, it's certainly something everyone can use. All right. Okay, I think it's really interesting to know that you did all of this while being at CMU. One thing that I would love to know about is how do you think Carnegie Mellon as an institution has helped you with your process of entrepreneurship? Have the professors provided you guidance? Have the alumni helped you raise some kind of funding? How has CMU been an aid to you and your startup?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So, a lot of points, I would say. So, the number one thing I say would be the classes. Like I mentioned before, I bring a specific notebook to all my classes, even like my classes that I don't really think will be relevant to my startup. And I'll take, if anything interesting pops up, I'll take notes in there and I'll bring those notes to my meetings. So, actually, a lot, like I would say, our business models and financial models have changed like 99% because of what I learned in school. So yeah, it's been a huge impact. In
That's
fact, we
valuable.
literally revamped, yeah, we revamped our entire organizational structure within like a week after like a specific unit in my organizational behavior course. So yeah, it's definitely been a huge impact in that way. And I am forever grateful for that, which is why, it's also allowed me to kind of take a load of stress off my back in terms of like maintaining my ideal QPA or GPA for non-CME students. So there is definitely the most positive point in my mind. I would say also is the amount of initiatives or resources, the amount of resources on campus. So there are a lot of funds um, allocated to different things, but if you're able to incorporate, different initiatives under your own venture, you then have access to those funds, right? So for us, we were able to have a couple of our trips funded by partnering with different initiatives within the CMU community, by taking on different tasks during our travels and documenting them. So, and it's really like small things, you know what I mean? Like attending presentations about your trip abroad, or we worked with CS Academy, which is this initiative on campus where essentially the whole focus, it's a nonprofit initiative, and their whole focus is to teach high school students computer science. So with our Zodaj Ambassador program, we kind of incorporated their goals and we used CS Academy's platform to teach them computer science, right? So this was definitely a way for us to make connections within our community that were very valuable in the long run, but also get funding from different resources for all of our trips, all of our initiatives. And it's been something that I definitely would not have had the opportunity to have if not for CMU. So, and I mean, coming into CMU, I knew there would be a lot of resources, and I feel like a lot of students feel this, and it can be harder than one might think to kind of identify the right resources for you. And a lot of the times I see students get discouraged because it's like, I don't qualify for this, or I applied for this and I didn't get it. And it's like, you literally have to knock on every door. You can't just look at like the ideal resources for you. You have to make certain things fit. So we literally like went for everything. Like if it didn't fit, we didn't care. We applied anyway, and we just like, presented ourselves as, a group that could fit the criteria if need be. So that's definitely a piece of advice for CMU students.
Okay, last question. No more time. Expanding onto the advice you gave to CME students or any student in general about entrepreneurship, I think there's no one better to guide an aspiring entrepreneur about entrepreneurship than someone who's been through the process himself or herself.
Mhm.
And you certainly one of those people. What motivation, not even advice, what motivation can you give to a student who does not, who is not willing to risk everything,
Mhm.
but but really likes entrepreneurship, right? What
Right.
Do you know the actual satisfaction someone would get by being an entrepreneur, which you might only get in an industry? Could you expand on that feeling you get after being successful and making a real change? I
Yeah.
think if you could, that would be something that would genuinely have someone enable someone to take the risk and go forward.
Yeah, for sure. So honestly, in my experience, when things go well for us and then we're suddenly presented with like the fruits of our labor, I guess you could say, it's always a very surreal experience because, like I mentioned before, I mean, we've been doing this for 2 years, and the majority of that 2 years was failure. Like, we literally were failing miserably and then pivoting, failing and pivoting, failing and pivoting over and over and over again for 2 years, right? And to be honest, it's only this summer or during quarantine that things really started changing and we started seeing the results of 2 years of work, research, development, and iteration, right? So that was surreal to say the least, but also like it made me take a step back and really think about, you know, why I even started what I was doing and if I ever imagined myself being where I am now today. And it's definitely more satisfying than I can even put into words, to be honest. But more than that, it really teaches you a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
So I think college is an opportunity for everyone to grow as an individual. And I think there's no better way to do that than to literally throw yourself in the deep end and just figure out and see if you can manage to swim. And at the end of the day, like, you know, entrepreneurship doesn't have to entirely be about risk. You know, I know a lot of people who are cautious in their entrepreneurship and still manage to succeed. And there's nothing really wrong with that. I would just say the one thing I would caution against is trying to fit a certain mold. And this is something we had to learn at an early stage. I think entrepreneurship is something that's boundless and can't really be caged into any sort of formula. And if you try to follow like a specific formula, like you try to become the next Uber or the next, I don't know, Airbnb and do exactly what they did, it just might not work for you. Your best bet is to really just go with what you're passionate about and forge forward. Like otherwise, you know, it's really easy to give up. It's really easy to quit. If it's something that you've created, that you've broken barriers to create, that you've knocked down every door to get off the ground, like it's a lot harder to quit. Like a lot harder to quit because you just put in so much effort. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing quite like seeing something that you created become a reality and seeing people believe in your vision as well. And at the end of the day, not everyone's going to believe in your vision to begin with, and that is okay. And it's going to be discouraging, but the main thing is learn from what people have to say. Don't listen to everything they have to say because some people can be mean and not so helpful, but there is always some good advice in there, and it's always good to be open minded and learn and be willing to change your idea for the better. Obviously, not too much because some people will put you down like a path that's not so great. But yeah, I mean, it's all really at the end of the day a learning experience, and it's never the end of the world. You know, you fail, and that's okay. Like you'll learn from it, and you'll do better next time, and you'll succeed. And then there's still the risk of failure for like later down the line, and again, that's okay. The whole process is really just about learning how to do better, how to improve your product, how to improve your team management skills, all of the above. And honestly, that's the hardest part, leading a team, in my opinion. I am not a people person at all. So that was a rude awakening for sure. But yeah, really just surround yourself with good people and take on the journey. And the results will be great, whether or not you become the next Bill Gates, you know?
Wow, that was pretty inspirational. All the advice you just gave me, and to everyone who's there too. So pretty much, don't be discouraged and be open to change with your idea from the beginning, right? I mean, you come across failure, stand up, rise again, and if someone puts you down, it's fine. Listen to them, see if it makes sense, try incorporating in your business, and just keep going forward.
Just
That's
keep going.
that's that's the key. That's
Yeah.
fair. All right. Thank you so much, and I wish you good luck with your work with Zodaj. And I must say, everything you're doing is genuinely really impressive, and certainly an inspiration to me and whoever's watching.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great meeting you.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Entrepreneur Interview Series presented by the Undergraduate Entrepreneurship Association at Carnegie Mellon University. That was Awa, the CEO and co founder of Zodaj. You can find more information about her company by visiting their website at the link shown below. Thank you and have a great day ahead, guys.